Hey Channel Insiders, I'm your host Katie Bavoso, and welcome back to part 2 of my interview with Chance Irvine, Vice President of Information Technology at Transit Technologies. If you haven't watched or listened to part 1, head on over to channelinsider.com right now to catch up. Today in part 2, Chance explains how he approaches leadership about why he needs to take on a new channel partner and what he has to consider before the conversation even starts. Chance, you talked a little bit earlier about how, when you communicate with your leadership, you let them know, hey, I could do it in this amount of time, but if we work with these outsourced IT partners, they'll get it done much faster, much better inside of our timeline. How else do you communicate with your business's leadership about the need for channel partners and outsourced IT resources? Because typically we're not talking about people that are as versed in IT as you are or as those channel partners are.
My story here is a little bit of a cheat because I have business leadership now, and in a previous job, they want to go. They know they want to outsource as much as possible. So I think I'm in a little bit of a different spot than a lot of folks have been. So in my case, the discussions aren't very difficult. If I'm talking about bringing in an internal person, that is way harder for me right now. But I think that's unique in established companies. You've been around for 60 years or more, probably not even that long necessarily. Your leadership is probably going to be some of the folks that it's not local. I'm concerned for the security, those sorts of things. Well, if I was in that scenario, I would be going to them and talking to them about, if you wanted to do, I'm going to use SOC 2 compliance as an example, but what is your big nugget? SOC 2, if I try to pull that internal and accomplish everything we had in the same time frame, would be 40 to 60% more expensive than what it's been with the third parties. I would have to buy systems that I don't have to have because the MSP has them. I'm just a portion of their bigger pond. So my costs are down because of that. To cover 24/7 personnel, wow, the cost on the people alone would probably about match everything I'm getting from all the other places. But that would be just the people. I haven't even touched the systems yet. So just from a cost perspective, take the time, model that out. Here's what that would cost internal. Here's what it costs external. And you got to know how to carve up the dollars. You have implementation money, you have operational money. The CFO in your company probably understands how to, implementation money spends differently. In the accounting world, money is not money. You have money type 1, money type 2, money type 3. You have money that hits EBITDA or the bottom line. You have money that doesn't. And in your spend and in your efforts, you have those different pieces. And if you understand that, great. Then these comments aren't for you. You're already there. But so many of our peers, they don't realize that. And if they can go and they can, show the internal versus outsourcing comparison, that's one layer of numerous layers. And then show, okay, and on the external, not only is it already less expensive in the all-out cash spend, 40% of it in the first year is just implementation. Well, implementation is treated in a certain way on the accounting side in a mature organization. So that implementation money doesn't hit EBITDA. And again, if you don't understand this, go talk to your finance leadership. That's another big thing. You want to get good connections around the rest of the business, get the CFO on board with where your mind is. Because if that role can help you tell your story, you're going to be 90% down the road if the CFO already understands your point and why these things are valuable. So I'm a big advocate for championing your financial leadership. And then, of course, your own direct leadership. Before you take it to the entire team, if you report to the CEO, fine, or the COO, fine, wherever you report to, then if you report to the CFO, great, that takes care of your first bullet point. But definitely champion your direct leader. Make sure you understand how do they need to understand your world. And just throwing a bunch of technology lingo at them is not going to do it. You need to sit down and have a cup of coffee. Just talk to them. Learn a little bit about them. I do report to the COO, and it's taken me a while to understand how does she think about the business management and how these things fit together. Still a challenge today. It'll be 3 years in next month, but the challenges are much less because we've taken the time and we've put in the effort. Both of us. You have to help them understand this is where I'm usually coming from. All of us IT folks, we have different idiosyncrasies. I can talk business, but my passion level, my face and my demeanor, everything is the same as if I'm very upset about something. I have to know that about myself. I have to catch myself and say, hey, wait a minute. I'm just thinking really hard about this. And I really believe this is where we need to go. I'm not mad about anything. As you get to know people, you get to let them know what are your nonverbals. And yeah, I have some very unfortunate nonverbals. I know that. I got to let
We all do.
yeah. So, but you learn that. And this whole question, it's not about what do you need to say in the meeting that's going to memorialize the decision to do this project. If that's the first time you're trying to explain to the business leaders, you lost. You need to have planted some seeds, had some conversations. Hey, Mr. Sales Leader, how does this issue impact your world? Hey, customer service management, how does this impact your world? Have some of those conversations to understand the various things you can bring to the table. How do they understand how once this is fully in place and it's operational, how is it going to make their team's lives more effective? You got to have those conversations before you get in those meetings for the memorialization of this thing.
Yeah.
Because you need those people to be champions on it. They need to have almost all of their questions already answered because you've had those over coffee, over lunch, or in different meetings because they know you understand their plight, what it is they've got to. It's a complex answer. I don't think there's a golden answer. There's no 3 bullet points that get it done. You got to put in the work. You got to spend time getting to know who they are. The CFO, I've happened to be working with the CFO that I worked with at a different company previously. I know how to let him know this is the change in effectiveness across the company. That context says a lot to him. Oh, we're going to improve effectiveness for revenue generating people by 30%. He knows what that means to the bottom line. But all CFOs are not the same. Just because my CFO looks at that, your CFO might look at something else. You got to figure out what it is that he tracks and then turn your conversation into those contexts that really speak to him.
I love that, Chance. I think what's so important about what you're pointing out is, like you said, there's no 3 bullet points. There's not a magic bullet here. As we love to say in this industry, there is no magic bullet. But I think what's important to consider about IT conversations is that they are business conversations and they're people conversations. You can't
100%.
just go in guns blazing and say, all right, SOC 2, SOC 3, here we go. You can't say those things to your CFO or your COO. They don't know what you're saying, and they have a lot going on as well. So it's important to talk to them about their needs and then figure out how to work that conversation around what you're pitching to them for those IT needs. So I think you explained it brilliantly. I have a fun question for you, which are what technology trends are you implementing into your business this year, and how are your channel partners helping you do this, if at all?
This year, it's definitely all about that security and compliance. So that's a baseline piece. And how can we do any of the things we need to do to make ourselves more secure, but to do it in a way that doesn't impact our end users very much. It's going to be a difference, right? There's going to be a change. They have to do some things different, but with some of the tools that we've put in place, it's minimal. KnowBe4 is a tool that we went for security this year. We're using it, I would say, very well, but there's still a lot of improvement. Our vCISO group helped us make that decision. Our vCISO team has a lot of experience with that tool. So they've been able to help us hit the ground running and be using it as well as we are at this point so quickly. With everything else going on, 5 months in, I think we're doing pretty well with it. That's one example. I think a big buzzword out there right now is AI. And everybody wants, well, what are we doing with AI? What are we doing with AI? And, I just recently challenged one of my peers internally. He's like, okay, just because we got some AI domains and we have an AI domain that redirects to our .com, that doesn't make us serious about AI. How are we going to tell our story? What are we actually doing with it? So right now, trying to figure out how to utilize AI in a meaningful way in transportation. We're providing software and integration solutions for wheels on the ground. Things like routing. We've already been doing routing things and making intelligent decisions about, hey, we just got a note from the Google data that the street we're about to have them turn on, it's blocked 2 blocks down. How fast can we get that to the people that we've already been routing, right? So that they don't get stuck in that little traffic jam in that street, right? So AI is going to help us do better at that. We do pretty good anyway, machine learning and things from the past few years, but how do we take that to the next level? So a lot is going on there from a solutions perspective. Also, our VCSO is very on top of the AI stuff. How do we implement AI safely? The big concern with AI is whatever you put in there, if you're using a public AI engine, the whole world now has that data. So what are you putting in there? And making sure how we use it is secure. So that's a big thing because we've been even bringing AI things into Read AI is an example of one that our end users are asking for today. Fundamentally not against it. It's a great thing. It wraps up a meeting for you and gives you nice sections of here's what the conversation was. This person said this person said that, and it's all categorized. That's great. It's fantastic. But what were you discussing in that meeting? Was it appropriate to even have it on? Have we trained the people? Hey, wait a minute. That meeting is about solving a particular problem for end users, and you're probably going to be talking about some end user data in that conversation. Probably shouldn't be using it in that case. We need to make sure our end users are, one, educated. We need to know whichever tool, whether it's Read AI or we use Copilot with Microsoft, whatever we end up with. I'm very much on that security compliance minded thing for the use of AI. So AI is probably the biggest new fun technology our business is looking to do. I'd be surprised if most of the listeners out there don't have their business leaders asking the same thing. How are we making the most of AI?
Yet to be seen. I look forward to where we are in 2025. With the rate that it's moving and developing, I do look forward to that conversation continuing into next year and seeing where exactly we go. But I think you're right. It is so important to consider security. Just again, it comes to just because you can, should you?
Right.
Like, where exactly does that make the most sense?
Yep.
Chance, before we wrap up today, is there anything I didn't ask or any advice that I haven't kind of pulled out of you that you would like to give to the MSP, to the channel solution provider audience?
You've probably heard it a little bit in this conversation, but you need to look to be a mentor to the people you're selling to as well. I've been doing this for 25 years, and the older I get, the more I understand I don't know. And hopefully my peers out there are thinking about things that way as well. There's always more to know, and I know more based on the smart people I surround myself with. And you as a provider, if you're coming into my team, you're going to be part of my umbrella of solutions. I absolutely am going to expect you to be a mentor to me, to my user base. Now, the folks listening to this, you might be the salespeople. You got to know that what you're selling, the services, the people on your teams are going to be able to fulfill that mentorship capability for me, because I'm going to figure that out while you're trying to sell to me. If you are Mr. or Mrs. Salesperson, you're not the person. It's not you. It's the folks that once we sign, that fulfill what it is you're selling. I got to know that team is going to make these things connect. So regardless of the name of the tool you're going to license to me, it's about the people. It's about the support and enablement that comes through your team. That's the biggest thing for me. And I think it needs to be for most of my peers out there that would also be buying, but you might even have to help them understand what I just said. They don't realize they need that kind of support from you. That piece underneath, I think too many of my peers, they're just trying to check a box because the business is pushing them. Get going, hit this milestone. I need to hit milestones, and I know I need to hit milestones. But if I have to hit a milestone a day late or a week late because it's going to be right a week later, but a disaster, I would rather explain, we're not going to make that date. It's probably going to be a week later. Well, why is that? It's like, because we can't get it right by that date. I need another week. For my people, my peers, don't have that conversation the day it's due. You should see that coming. You should be able to say, hey, that's not going to make it. We're going to have to push that date. But you as a provider, you need to help some of my peers out there, especially ones that haven't been doing this very long. They're new in their leadership role. You have an opportunity to take advantage of them because they don't know any better. And you can make your numbers this quarter, this cycle. Well, good for you. They're going to learn. They'll eventually understand, oh my gosh, they took total advantage of me. Or you could take advantage of the opportunity to help build that new leader up. I promise you, some of the things I do in my procurement are from lessons I learned when I first got started in management. Those things will never happen again. And I'll never work with some of those people because they took advantage of me as a young person. I didn't know any better. And wow, I didn't get what I needed out of it. So for channel company leaders trying to sell into this market, integrity is huge. I won't name the company, but one of my favorite scenarios, when I had a hard thing, I had to go ask this provider. I was like, hey, here's a scenario. This happened. This was wrong. Nobody's fault, but I know now this wasn't right in our agreement. And they said, okay, what adjustment do we need to make? And we talked through it. And they're like, oh, okay, let's redo this for this aspect of the scope. And it was carved out specifically. Like, let's just do a supplemental that changes that. Well, wow, that was easy. They were like, well, don't take it wrong, but we don't care about this contract that we're already in. We care about the next one. So what do you need? How do we need to solve your problems? I was like, wow, that is huge. And what trust they built in that scenario. Because once we signed paper, when we got into the thing, that group was now focused on what do we need to do so the next time the renewal comes, there's just no question they're going to keep working with us. That's how everybody needs to operate. That little story, turn that into you as providers, turn that into how you can do that within your own world. Most of the folks I'm working with, most of them I've worked with in some capacity in my past for a long time. I know them from somewhere. I've been watching their careers, what they've done in their world, and how they've treated their customers. So I can't promise that all of them are going to stick around forever, because I still have to be honest at looking at what I can find in the market and do the right thing for the business. But the integrity play, that's always going to be right.
If we'd like to learn more about Transit Technologies, is there anywhere we can go?
Sure. Transit-technologies.com is a great place to start. There's links into our other businesses within. We do have a blog link within there that folks keep up to date things that are happening.
Chance, I appreciate your advice and your insights so much, and I absolutely know our audience will. And thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure getting to talk to you.
Fantastic. I appreciate the conversation, Katie. Look forward to seeing your work in the future.
Thanks so much to Chance for joining me today, and thank you for watching or listening to this episode of Channel Insider Partner POV. Check out all episodes on channelinsider.com or watch on our YouTube page at channelinsider_news and trends. You can also listen to every episode in podcast format on your preferred podcast listening platform. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow wherever possible so you never miss an episode. You can also connect with Channel Insider on LinkedIn and X at Channel Insider, or with me at Katie Bavoso. Once again, I'm your host, Katie Bavoso, and I'll see you next time.